Flamingzard here, back again once again, and today people today. It's been so long since I did a recent video on this, and this time it's on a different format of a game, and I was lucky enough to be able to actually complete the first ever deck. It's not like, I would say it's fully complete, it just needs a little more pieces to make it more somewhat perfection of a way. And this is my Esper God Eternal deck. So for my commander for this, for EDH, is Barina, Lich Queen. Very good card that whenever you attack with one or more zombies, you draw that many cards. Then you discard that many cards, you gain that much life. So it helps out with that kind of a synergy. And just to pay 2 mana, exile 2 cards that are from your graveyard and create a 2/2 black zombie token. So you can just build an entire army, and it isn't a hard once per turn. So you can just keep going and going and going to pain as long as you have mana usage for it. So it's a very interesting card. I didn't think of adding this, but this is not the main source of the card. It is the commander. But these 3 are the MVPs to the deck. So we got God Eternal Orchestra. It has double strike, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you get a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. And same effect for any God Eternal. So when it dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it on the top of your library, 3rd from the top. So it has that. Then Bond 2, really good synergy. This deck is basically kind of like for you to be able to create much tokens as much as possible, and then you just sack them to draw many cards. That's what God Eternal Bond 2 can do, and it's a good... These 2 are like the true MVPs, while God Eternal Kefnet is just the insurance policy. For allow you to reveal the first card each time you draw it. Whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery card, you can copy that card, and the card copy for the cast is 2 less. So you can do a whole lot of shenanigans with it. And I would say God Eternal Kefnet is actually the better one out of the 2, from what a lot of people were saying, but it's still good. But we'll go to lands because it's a real quick one. So we got for the Azorius Guildgate, Choke the Stray with Coat the Stray is a real good one. Enters the battlefield, you may reveal an island or a swamp card from your hand, and if you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. So you won't... I've seen cards that would pay for life, but as soon as I saw this was real good, and it won't cost any life, so it won't cost too much. Next up, we got 2 Demir Guildgates for the dual combos, and then the Submerged Boneyard. Then we got the usual plains, islands, and swamps. So it's about up to 24 lands. I would add a bit more if you wanted to, just to go with the theme of it, and then add like a Manolith. That way it can hand out, make it easier for you to have more cards for mana cost. But now that we got that out of the way, let's get into the actual deck. So you already saw the God Eternals, which are the MVPs to the deck. Sorry about that. MVPs to the deck. Here's the others. So we have one of the other cards, Tavari's High Revealer. Each time an opponent casts spells, only any time they could cast a sorcery speed. So this helps out for most of the cards. Plus with the +1 ability for you to end into your turn, sorcery spells. You cast any sorcery spell and as though they have flash, which is good, and then return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment card to the owner's hand and draw a card. I would say this card is good. This card is mostly good because it can prevent like Ficadel Ori. So that way it will limit the options for any spells that people would cast in their sorcery speed and flash speed, while you are able to counter it because you're able to add cast a sorcery spell in the instant speed, and will be a bit faster enough that you can counter on stacks for the other cards that they would have. Next up, a good limit card, which I like this. Dolben Hand to Control. The artifact, instant, and sorcery spells your opponent casts cost 1 more to cast. -1 until your next turn. Prevent all damage that will be dealt to and dealt by target permanent and opponent controls. So this card's real good because I liked it on the more +1 counter, plus 1 more that mana color to cast for their spells. So it would slow down even more. It would slow down more on a couple of cards, not like a whole bunch, but it can do more when it's real good. Next up, we have Ashgoth, Dream Render. Ashhoke is good. The spells and abilities your opponent controls can't cause their controller to search their library. So it prevents cards that would, like Evolving Wilds, to search for a land from sacrificing it for that, or any other cards like Solomon Warderone to sacrifice when it dies, draw a card. Well, that it could go through, but there are other cards that it could prevent from that. Next up, it is Kaya, Bane of the Dead. Really good. Your opponent and permanents your opponent controls with hexproof. It can be targeted of spells and abilities you control as though they didn't have hexproof. And -3 to exile a target creature. This is really good. You could build the whole entire commander around her, and you could limit more on your opponent's options. So it helps out with that. Then we have Duravel, Rogue Shadow Mage. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has one or fewer cards in hand, Duravel or Rogue Shadow Mage deals 2 damage to them. -1 to target player discards a card. So it helps out for discarding and just a way to deal more damage that way if the opponent has the lesser or fewer cards, including yourself, but you will be drawing a bunch of more cards just to prevent some stuff. Final of the Planeswalkers for that kind of a section is Chase Wielder Mysteries. This card's real good. I love this. It's an alternate winning condition. If you withdraw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. +1, the target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into the graveyard, draw a card. A -8, which is kind of like the ultimate, basically. Draw 7 cards, then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So this card's real good for like a long term of a game process. And it says a target player. So you can choose yourself to mill the top 2 cards of your deck, in top 2 of your library, into the graveyard, and then you would draw a card on top of it, so you will be getting rid of 3 free cards. You will be getting rid of 2 that you don't need, and then draw 1 for free. So it helps out with that. Next up we have... So sorry about that. Again, next up we have Whisper Ancient. It's a good card. It has flash, and when it enters the battlefield, surveil 1. So some of the cards I added in this have surveil abilities, while some have like some token base, like skull clamp combinations, negations, and all that. So surveil is a really good ability for this deck. Next up we have an Elite Guild Mage, and it has the cost right over there. I'm not going to say the costs just to save up the time. My apologies. If you do want the videos to be longer for like EDH, I can. It's up to you guys. But with that being said, this one has a flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life and draw a card. So you get an additional of a draws for that base, while gaining life, so you will be able to survive on the opponent's onslaughts. Next up, we have Darkblade Ancient. As long as you surveil this turn, Dark Blade Agent has Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to the player, you draw a card. So you could do. So this card is kind of good. I wouldn't say kind of, but it is good when you have the combo pieces for Surveil. And you could possibly build a deck all around on Surveil. I just added the other stuff in it just to be able to do all the things I wanted to do with it all I want. Next up, we have a Gleaming Overseer. And really good. And there are a couple of cards in there that you can just give it like your zombie army tokens, additional abilities that it doesn't have. So for this one, when it enters the battlefield, Amos 1, to put a +1/+1/+1 counter on an army you control. If you don't control one, create a 0/0 black zombie army token creature token first. Zombie tokens you control have hexproof and menace. So it's real good because it will give it hexproof on your side while you already have Kea to prevent people from their abilities having hexproof, but you can have yours have hexproof. Unless if they have their own Kea, you'll be able to go through some of this stuff. Plus with menace, it can prevent the people from blocking with just one creature for your bigger creatures. So it limits their options. Next up, we have a Twilight Panther. And a pay a black, and it gains Death Touch until the end of the turn. 1 mana cost, which is not bad for that. Next up, we have Tragic Poet. Tap it to sacrifice it to return a target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. So there are a couple of good enchantments I have in it that are summoned when they put on a card and prevents the opponent from activating that specific card in it until it leaves the field, and this can bring it back for you to reuse it again. So it's really cool for you to be able to do that. Next up, we have a Dimir in format. When Dimir format enters the battlefield, Surveil 2. So it's real good just to surveil more reason for that. This one I like. Nightveil Sprite has flying, and when it attacks, you surveil one. So each time you just attack with it, you would surveil one from your deck. From your library. Sorry. Wrong term. Different card game. Anywho, next up we have a Watcher in the Mist. Good card for flying, and when it enters the battlefield, surveil 2. Then we have Ogre Bolas. This one is good. When I saw it, you just look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery spell among them, put it into your hand, the rest in the bottom in any order. I might get more of this for another deck of use in the future, and hopefully that will help out. Next up, we have the Visitor of the Scorpion. When it enters the battlefield, Amos 1 and zombie tokens you control have Death Touch. So it's real good for that, for the additional abilities that your zombie army tokens will have. And even your zombie tokens, like for regular zombies as well, they will gain Death Touch, they will gain Menace, Hexproof, Vigilance. They will gain almost every single ability that it will be added to it. And next up, we have a Herald of Dark Horde. When it dies, Amos 2. So it just helps out for the Amos. Next up, we have Banehound, which has Lifelink and Haste. Haste is allowing you to just play it and attack with it during the turn, and you gain life whenever you gain life equal to its power. Next up, we have a Surtep of the Rivier. Enters the battlefield, Amos 1. It's just the same thing for some of the cards. Next up, we have Shriek Diver. It has flying, and you just pay 1 and it gains haste until the end of the turn. So it's not bad for a turn 1 play if you have up to 4 mana. Because if you do it with 3, it won't gain the haste ability. But if you pay the 3 and then you pay the 1 for its ability, then it will gain a haste and will allow it to attack on the first turn. That's it for the creatures. Now for sorceries, we have Enter the God Eternals. love this one because when you play it, enter the God Eternal, deals 4 damage to target creature. You gain life to that amount. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into the graveyard, then a -4. So you could just add more armies into that. Plus, you could even mill yourself in the process of it as soon as you have Chase on the field and everything. Next up, we have Mnemonic Betrayal. When I saw this card, it was really good. I just didn't think of a good combo deck for it, but it can do. Basically, you can exile all cards from the opponent's graveyard. You may cast those cards this turn, and you may spend them as though they were mana of any type to cast of those spells at the beginning of the next end step. If those cards that have remained exiled, return to the opponent's graveyard, and then you exile this card. So it's really good for you if your opponent has a bunch of good cards that it might be very useful for you. You could just cast this and then just be able to take one of them cards, pay for the regular mana for it, and just do extra shenanigans you could even pull on top of it, including for the other stuff. Come on. Sorry. Again. This is getting on my nerves. Anywho, let's continue. Next up, we have Notion Rain. Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. Notion Rain, it deals 2 damage to you. So it's not bad of a spell for more surveil abilities. Next up, we have the Wipe our clear the board single combats to each player chooses a creature or a planeswalker they control, then sacrifice the rest. Players can't cast creature or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn. So it's not bad. Which will prevent a lot of stuff from being casted upon you. If you have like a very low board and everyone else is just ramping, you could just cast single combat and it will help out with that. Next up, we have a Wandering Strike, exile target creature, then a Profferate. So this helps out with the Profferate ability. It gives additional counters to your zombie army tokens. Or you could just create more, but you would not be able to create more on top of that. So you might be able to just get extra +1/+1 counters on them, along with even adding it again in another treasure token if you wanted to. Next up, we have a Bond of Insight. Good spell, which each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into the graveyard. Return up to 2 instant and sorcery instant sorcery cards from your graveyard into your hand, then exile Bonds of Insight. So it helps out real good for you to mill more, and then you can add 2 out of the instant or sorcery spells and just add them back to your hand, and for you to do even more shenanigans that you can even potentially do that is just like over the top. So you could even do all that and you won't have any issues. Like, I'm sorry to say, but you won't have any issues when you have this card and everything. So you won't be too much of a hassle. Next up, we have a finale of a Revelation. Draw an X amount of cards. Then, if X is 10 or more, instead shuffle your graveyard into your library. Draw an X amount of cards. Untap it up to 5 lands. And you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. Exile the finale of Revelation. So it's really good card, I would say. Really good. I just only add some of these cards that it will do to shuffle back a card from your graveyard into your library. Just in case if you don't pull the Chase, which is like your long-term game card. So you will be able to have even more win conditions and just give your opponent in a way that prevents yourself from decking out in the process if you don't even have Jace on the field. And you can just get more additionals for the other stuff. Next up, we have Shimmer of Possibility, Really good. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest in the bottom of your library in random order. So it's not bad. It gives you the more searches, more one card added for the signature piece, or like next card you will be able to play for the next turn. Next up we have Jace's Triumph. Draw 2 cards. If you control a Jace Planeswalker, draw 3 cards instead. Draw more cards. What else can you say? Next up we have Tamios and Pathity. Scry 4 and then draw 2 cards. So you just look at the top 4, place them on top or bottom in your order, and then draw 2 cards. So it helps out. Stealth Mission, it's next. So you put 2 +1/+1 counters on the target creature you control. That creature can't be blocked until the end of the turn, so it makes it unblockable. When you put the +2 +1/+1 counters on it, you can even add it more to the damage that it needs, that you need it to. Next up we have Colas the Missile, which is for you to return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, then a -1. So it adds more counters on it, and you can return a non-land permanent. So it could bounce back on opponents' gameplay and such. Next up we have Relentless Advance, a -3, which is not bad. Next up we have Vicious Rumors. Vicious Rumors deals 1 damage to each opponent. Each opponent discards a card, then puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. You gain 1 life. So it helps out in a way for you to do additional stuff that you wanted to, which not only it deals 1 damage to them, discards a card from them, and mills the top card of their library. So it gives them a sense of trying to figure out if it's also of a mill base, which some of the cards in here are mill, or some of them are mill based. So it can help out in a way. Next up we have Mind Rot. Target player discards 2 cards and limit their options so the attacks can go through a little bit better. Next up we have Duravel's Shadowfuge. Target player discards 2 cards and loses 2 life. So you could choose yourself or choose your opponent and limit their options even more to not be able to counter spells, to be able to do almost nothing for your attacks. Almost nothing. Next up we have a Toll of the Evasion. This card's good. A target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card, a -1. Really good, I would say, because of you to look at your opponent's hand and then discard it. So you would be able to just see their options, and you could just get rid of some of the pieces of the cards that they needed for their combo, or some of the counters that it could affect your gameplay. So it helps out in a sense. Next up we have Bond of Revival. Return a target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste until the end of the turn. So it helps out for some of your key cards, which is why you add more cards into your graveyard for you to be able to even some of the bigger creatures that you couldn't have been able to cast to begin with. So you could just get it for free. And it helps out with that. Next up we have Eight of Fallen. A good spell to choose 1 or both. Return the target creature card from your graveyard into your hand. Or return the target planeswalker card from your graveyard into your hand. So you could add more of your creatures. So you could add a couple of your planeswalk. You can add the 1 planeswalkers that you wanted back, and the creature cards that you want the piece that adds that turbo edition back to your hand, and you would do a lot of stuff. Next up we have Dovin's Veto. We're going into instance now. The spell can't be countered a target non-creature spell. So this card's good for counters when it comes to that. Next up, we have Sphinx's Insight. Draw 2 cards, and then the Ademanum, which if you cast this spell during your main phase, you gain 2 life. So it adds more to that. If you draw 2 cards, and if you play it during your main phase, you gain 2 life. So it helps out even more on that. Next up, we have Tyrant Scorn. Choose a 1. Destroy target creature with converted mana 3 cost or less, or return the target creature to its owner's hand. So it helps out in a way that if, like, you could get rid of some of their converted mana cost of 3 or less, that is like their key synergy card, and you can just get rid of it. Or you can return the target permanent to your hand, to the owner's hand, that is like a big deal to you, but it would set them back a bit. But you can also return your creature from back to your hand that you're able to cast it again to prevent a board wipe from affecting you so much. So it helps out in so much way. Next up, we have God's Willing. Target creature you control gains protection from any color of your choice until the end of the turn. Scribe 1. So it's a really good card for that, just to give it a protection from some of your attacks. So let's say if your opponent plays like a mono, I get somewhat of a mono colors, but sometimes they would mix it. Let's say red and black, and you have this in your hand. You could just cast it for 1, cast it and put the protection from black, and if they're all creatures on their field are mostly blacks, that it can block your stuff. Or if it's just all red, you can just protection from red till the end of the turn, and you can scribe 1 for even more additional plays for your next turns. So it helps out in a way. Next up, we have a Divine Strike. Target creature gets a +1/+0 till the end of the turn. Draw a card. So it helps out with the easier ways to make sure that your attacks go through. Because sometimes some of the creatures you would have like low attack and low power and toughness, so some of the attacks won't go through. But if you added a +1/+1 counters on the other cards, you can just go through it. Next up is Take Heart. Target creature gets a +2/+2 till the end of the turn. You gain life for each attacking creature you control. So you could just have like onslaught of an alpha strike on your opponent. Cast this, get a +2/+2 counter on one of your creatures, then gain a life and additional. So it helps out so much in that way. Then we got a Rally of Wings. Untap all creatures you control. Creatures you control with flying get +2/+2 till the end of the turn. So it helps out in a way that you can untap all of your creatures to prevent some destructions, and to be able to defend during your when your turn ends, for you to be able to block on your opponent's creatures and everything. So you won't have to deal much. Next up, we have Spell Swindle. A very good spell I like. Counter target spell. Creature create X colorless treasure artifact tokens, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. They have the same artifact ability. Sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So it helps out for you to do that 1 win condition, or a chance for you to have some more mana up for grasp if you don't have the 2 win condition combos. And I'll get to explaining on that when I get the card and everything. Next up, we have Commence the End Game. The spell can't be countered. Draw 2 cards. Then amass X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So you could just create. Let's say you have like 6 or 10 cards in hand, and you just get amass 10. You get 10. You get 10 zombie army tokens if you don't have any, and they would all gain 10 +1/+1 counters on each of them. So you would be able to have like a bunch of 10s with 10/10 on your zombie army tokens. So it helps out a lot. We have next Dream Twist. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into their graveyard. Flashback for you to be able to play it in the graveyard. In addition of activating this card for it to have flash and exile, so it would help out in a sense. Next up, we have Psychic Spiral. Another good card, just in the case if you don't have Jace out. But sometimes it can be good for a recycle of a play. For the shuffle all cards from your graveyard into your library, target player puts that many cards from top of his or her library into their graveyard. So it helps out in the sense that, let's say you have a big graveyard, you have like 40 or 60 cards in the library, and you're able to activate this and return all 60 of your cards from your graveyard back into your library, all shuffled, and your opponent has to mill 60 cards in that process. So if you can play this card like a little bit later, sometimes you can play it early if you don't have it. It just depends. It depends on that. Next up, we have an Crush Descent. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. It pays 2 mana. Amos 2, which is not like my favorite of a counter spell, but it's better than the Quench because it just a counter target spell unless the controller pays 2. This one I just only somewhat like because I can counter it unless the opponent pays 2. And you get the additional of the 2 more +1/+1 counters on your zombie army tokens if you already have them in the field. So it's like a plus of a better. Next up, we have Telling Time. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of those into your hand. 1 on top of your library. And 1 in the bottom of your library. So this can, for you to have a card in your hand that you can play on the turn. Put on top of it for your next turn play. And the bottom of it, which you don't need. So it helps out in that sense. Next up, we have Counter Spell. Just to counter a target spell. So it helps out for the counter synergy. Next up, our Rester's Abomination. We have the returns a target creature to the owner's hand, and then Omanon. If you cast a spell during your main phase, draw a card. So it helps out for the drawing in a sense. Then we have Spell Snuff. Counter target spell. Fateful Hour. If you have 5 or less cards, if you have 5 or less life, draw a card. So it helps out in that sense of a way. Then we have Choose. In an instant or sorcery card in your graveyard, you may cast a card this turn. If that card will be in your graveyard for this turn, exile it instead. So you will be able to play it, your spell, for the next turn. Sometimes you would be able to have a counter spell in a graveyard. You won't be able to cast, and you decided to add that because you would be needing that for your next play, just in case for the insurance policies. Then we have No Escape. Counter target creature or planeswalker spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead. Instead of putting it into the owner's graveyard, scry 1. So it helps out for the counters. And the last of the piles, we have Soren's Siron's Thirst. Siron's Thirst, it deals 2 damage to target creature, and you gain 2 life. So it helps out in that sense. Then we have Open Onyxius' Cruelty. Target creature gets -5/-5 till the end of the turn. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Helps out in that sense. Here's the enchantments that helps out just in case of a Tragic Poet, in a sense. We have Prison Realm, which enters the battlefield, exile a target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until Prison Realm leaves the field. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. So it helps out for that. And now here's the 2 cards that are like the combo piece that it can even help you for the win conditions. So let's go with Smothering Tide first. Smothering Tide, when an opponent draws a card, that player may pay to. If that player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token. Helps out with that. Then the win condition to Revel Riches. When I saw Smothering Tide and Revel Riches were released, when these two were brand new, I saw a combo for this that it could be so dope for it. Because it could be a faster win condition. With Revel Riches, whenever a creature and opponent's creature dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token. Then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. So it could be either that you get treasure from its own effect, or you could get the additional on that and it piles it up until 10 or more, and you would be able to win the game in that process. So it helps out with that. So that's like my final win condition of the cards for this deck, and the rest are just good. Next up, we have a Hissing and Misma, which is good. When a creature attacks you, its controller loses 1 life. So this is like your protection from any bigger creatures that your opponent would play, and it'll be like, hey, you trying to attack me with that? You're going to lose a life in that process, man. Sorry, but not sorry. Next up, we have Enhanced Surveillance. You may look at the additional 2 cards each time you surveil. Exile an Enhanced Surveil to shuffle your graveyard into your library. So I like it because you could even build it. You could exchange a couple of these cards and make it nothing but Surveil as well. And you will be able to have a full use of this card. So it helps out with that. Then we have Memory Erosion. Really good when an opponent casts a spell. That player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into a graveyard. So it helps out with that way to mill more, to make your opponent feel like that you're going to be limited on options, and they would have no choice and feel like that they're getting annoyed by you and all that. Next hit, we have Kishama's Transmutation. It enchanted a creature. The enchanted creature loses all its abilities and has the base of power toughness of 1/1. Finally, the artifacts. It's the last but not least of them. We have Soul Ring, which you tap it for 2 colorless mana. Simple and good. Guild Globe, which when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Sacrifice 2 and tap it to sacrifice Guild Globe to add 2 mana of different colors. Next up, we have Talisman of Heraldry. You tap it for a colorless, or you could just tap it to add a plains or a swamp. And Talisman of Heraldry, it deals 1 damage to you for that option. Then we also have a Locket, which you could tap it for a black or a white. And when you pay 4 of any black or white, tap it, sacrifice it, or have Locket, draw 2 cards. So it gives it more draw power. Then we have Firewind Vessel. If Firemind Vessel, it enters the battlefield tapped, you can tap it for 2 mana of different colors. Helps out with that. Then the final, last but not least card, really good that I like, which is God Pharaoh Statue. Spell your opponent's cast costs 2 more to cast. So it doesn't matter if it's a creature, a instant, sorcery, enchantment, artifacts, all of them. Even the planeswalkers, it does not matter. They have to pay 2 more additional. So this is a combination of a card that it can even be used with Dovin Hand of Control. And some of the others that you can just anti-lock your opponent. You can lock your opponent completely, and they force themselves to have to pay more for each time they would have to cast any of their cards that they want to do for their synergies. And at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life. So it slowly ends the game in that process. So it makes it a more of a ticking time bomb processor for your opponent to be in, and they would be stuck with it. But that's going to be it for this video, you guys. I do apologize for it to be a little short, and I'm definitely glad I was able to get it not too short. And yeah, if you do want to see another deck profile, whenever it's on EDH or Brawl or Modern, Standard, comment below for any options for any deck profiles when it comes to Magic, Future Card Buddy Fight, any of them. Just comment below, and I can add those to your options of deck profiles for you guys to see. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you like it. Flamingzard here. I'm out.